This is Outnumbered. I'm Sandra Smith, and here today, Harris Faulkner, Andrea Tanteros, commentator and national spokeswoman for the LIBRE Initiative, Rachel Campos-Duffy, and today's #OneLuckyGuy, former intelligence and Pentagon correspondent and radio talk show host Chris Plant is here, and he is outnumbered. Provide us anything further on your resume, we'll include it in the intro.
There's a lot more. We'll save it.
Good to have you here, sir.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, it's a big news day. We want to get right to it in a rare moment for a sitting president. President Obama injecting himself right into the middle of the Republican presidential race. At a news conference in California, Mr. Obama slamming the GOP field, in particular, frontrunner Donald Trump.
I continue to believe Mr. Trump will not be president. And the reason is because I have a lot of faith in the American people. And I think they recognize that being president is a serious job. It's not hosting a talk show or a reality show. It's not promotion. It's not marketing. It's hard. And a lot of people count on us getting it right.
Trump at a town hall in South Carolina, firing right back at those comments, saying he takes the president's remarks as a compliment and not stopping there. Listen.
He has done such a lousy job as president. You look at our budgets, you look at our spending, we can't beat ISIS. Obamacare is terrible. We're going to terminate it. We're going to absolutely terminate and replace it. I mean, you look at everything. Our borders are like Swiss cheese. You're lucky I didn't run last time when Romney ran, because you would have been a one-term president.
Wow. Well, meantime, a new Quinnipiac poll finds Trump surging to a commanding 2-to-1 lead among Republicans nationally, 3 days ahead of the first in the South primary in South Carolina. All right, Chris, what do you make of President Obama firmly planting himself right in the middle of the GOP primary?
Well, I'm not surprised, I suppose, but he's singling out Donald Trump, which once again elevates Donald Trump. And it's asymmetric warfare. Everybody's firing pop guns at Donald Trump, and he's dropping nukes on everyone, and he controls the news cycle every day, and he wins every one of those exchanges.
Why do you think the president went there with Donald Trump, knowing Donald Trump's ability to strike back and how effective he is at it?
Because Trump makes him nervous. He makes the entire Democratic Party nervous. I've been saying this for months. In fact, in 2009, I wrote a column in the New York Daily News that said Republicans just let Trump speak when he appeared at CPAC, because he has this giant megaphone, Sandra, that's so effective against President Obama, and now we're seeing him use it as a presidential candidate. A headline from the Wall Street Journal just a couple weeks ago: 55% of Trump's support comes from working class, white, blue-collar voters. That is a demographic, Sandra, as you know from covering these stories, that has been forgotten. They are economically feeling the pain. They feel like they don't have political connections. They feel like they don't have a place. And Democrats have always thought, you belong in our party. Not anymore, these Reagan Democrats. And we saw this, Sandra, in an interview he did in December with NPR, when he named Trump by name then and said that Trump is exploiting anger and fear among these blue-collar men. They're very, very worried, and they should be. It's also a concession that they believe he's going to get the nomination.
Harris, but to Chris's point, don't you think this only boosts Trump even further when you consider the popularity of President Obama within even his own party? Does this not even just give Trump more support?
It puts him on a different level. I mean, you know, Donald Trump could just send the president one of his thank you notes with his picture on it and just say, thank you very much for making me a star, even more than I already am. But just to get serious for a second and to drill down at the numbers, and you ask yourself, away from all the fantasy of what it might look like if Donald Trump had to take on the Democrats, there's something that's happening as you drill down on some of the numbers. Hillary Clinton and how she shapes up against Trump, and Bernie Sanders and how he does. Hillary Clinton, well, if you look at an average of polls, she's about 10 points ahead of Trump. A lot of undecideds, though, so that could tighten. But Sanders, not as many undecideds. And he still beats Trump on average in a national. And so that means that there are fewer people to sway. It does two things for the Democratic Party. It forces them to take another look at Bernie Sanders, which we know they really don't want to do. And it forces them to take another look at Donald Trump, which we know they really don't want to do.
It just, you have to ask the inevitable question, Rachel. Is there anything that could hurt Donald Trump at this point?
I don't know, but I agree with Andrea when she says they must be taking him seriously, because we know that the president is the president of denial. I mean, this is the same guy who said that ISIS was a JV squad. So when he says that this guy isn't serious, we have to take another look at that. It's also kind of silly in the sense that, you know, this guy, before he was in the Senate, he was a community organizer. He was an agitator. You know, love him or hate him, Donald Trump is a very successful businessman. So his argument isn't very good when he says, you know, he's not serious, he's a reality TV star, because let's face it, he does have a record of having created jobs and done something.
I mean, he's no community organizer, but, you know, he's
no, that's true. But I think that it shows that they're nervous, absolutely, and for precisely the reason they're worried about these Reagan Democrats that have moved over in the past. And let's face it, the environment today is very similar to the environment it was in 1980.
But no other Republican candidate has been able to tap into them the way that he has. And I channel my immigrant dad. I talk to everybody in the city, cab drivers, doorman, people on the street. I've been doing it for months. This is why the establishment missed it, because they don't. Right. They believe that they know better.
But
they
the question,
believe,
Andrea, for all those people,
that they sit back in their offices and they believe they have this figured out. Donald Trump may not be a conservative, but it makes you wonder, Sandra. He's tapping into this secular populism. He's getting evangelicals. People feel like he speaks for them. And because the establishment in both parties didn't get in touch with their base, they're so out of touch. They didn't see him coming, and they are embarrassed because of it. Because they don't listen to them.
Will they show up? We've only had to look at Iowa and New Hampshire.
Yes. Yeah, I think absolutely. The enthusiasm for something other than the known political universe is extraordinary. I did about an hour on this on my radio show yesterday, and I asked Trump supporters to call in and tell me whether, if you're with Trump, is the Republican Party dead to you? And basically the answer across the board is yes, the Republican Party is dead to me. We've had it election cycle after election cycle. People feel as though they've been lied to, misled, that promises are made and not kept. Enough already. So they're looking for an alternative, and Donald Trump is in not just his own orbit, he's in his own political universe. He's created a new political universe, and people are moving over there because they've had it with the Republicans. That's why they're going for Bernie on the left, because they've had it with the Democrats.
No, it's true.
We've had it with the ruling class, and people are just looking to blow it up and start over again.
So you hold up a mirror, because that's what everybody on the left side of the aisle sees, too, because they are simultaneously going through much the same as Bernie Sanders would say, revolution. But what this forces, I mean, for President Obama to look at Donald Trump with seriousness. It's like playing the opposite word game. He's not serious. Oh, that must mean that you are serious about him. So for him to look at him, imagine the Democrats having to change their entire party because of a Donald Trump, because now they have to embrace potentially somebody who takes him on in the polls better than Hillary Clinton right now. That forces them to have to drill down on going farther left. Are they ready to do that?
You go back to this recent Washington Post article that headlined the idea that this infighting within the Republican Party is ripping the party apart. How do you suggest, Andrea, to protect the party, that the Cruzes and the Marco Rubios, how better should they be handling and reacting to Donald Trump?
I think, Sandra, that fault line was already there. I think Donald Trump just has pointed it out, and it makes you wonder when you look at what he's doing. Does he already know that he has enough support in the GOP that he can get the nomination, that he started to run a general election campaign? I mean, just think about, we've had publications like National Review believe like they know better than the American people, that they can actually run him out, that their wishes will trump, no pun intended, the will of the Republican base. And they were proven wrong, and they may be proven wrong again in South Carolina.
Did you and Rich Lowry ever go get a lunch after that show?
Really wouldn't go with me.
Maybe it's creative destruction. I mean, maybe it's possible that he's teaching the other candidates how to relate to the working class, how to speak to them, and basically how to street fight. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, how to be better politicians. So maybe he doesn't get the nomination in the end, but maybe he teaches these other candidates how to be better candidates.
That was brilliant. It is creative destruction. It is political creative destruction.
It is, Rachel.
Because the Republican Party needs to peel.
Yep. Street fighting like the leftists do. Donald Trump's doing it. Finally, we got someone on our side doing it. All right, turning to the Democrats. Despite her once commanding lead, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders are now locked in a dead heat nationally. A new Quinnipiac poll shows Clinton at 44% and Sanders at 42%. That's unchanged from February 5th, but is a dramatic drop from the 42-point lead Hillary has had in the last year. And in Nevada, a state the Clinton camp once thought it had locked up, Likely Democratic caucus goers are split evenly ahead of Saturday's election of delegates. 48% now say that they support Clinton, while 47% back Sanders. In October of 2015, Hillary had a 16-point lead there. Wow, how things have changed. Chris Plant, will you handicap Nevada for us, please, on the Democratic side?
I would love nothing more than to see Hillary lose everywhere. And it's, personally, on the Democrat side, it's kind of sport for me. It's fun. It's like the Iran-Iraq war. Who do you want to lose more? I want to see Bernie defeat Hillary. Hillary is such an awful, terrible candidate. She is not a nice person. She's not a good person. She deserves to lose. And I want to see the Democrats be stuck with the septuagenarian socialist that brought his wife to the Soviet Union on their honeymoon.
How do you really feel?
I didn't know that.
Aside from just what that was, and we'll just leave that there. It was very negative. And that's not working right now within the Democratic Party. What is working is Bernie Sanders' positive voice. And what has changed, to answer Andrea's question, that she alluded to, is what's different between the beginning of when those polls were taken and now for Hillary Clinton. People aren't wondering about her and focused on the negativities or the negatives. They're wondering about him. Who is Bernie? Is a trending Google question in recent days. Right. Who is Bernie? Who is this guy? And particularly among minorities, they're asking.
Well,
and so, and all the talk of how well Hillary Clinton and how much of the black vote and the Hispanic vote she can count on, what it's done is it's gotten those groups to say, well, who the heck is this guy? And why is everybody saying so many things about him to try to get me not to like him? I want to know more.
Sandra, can you break down the economic politics of the Democratic Party?
Easily.
Harris made a great point about the fact that they have to outflank each other on the left, and we're seeing that in these debates on economic policy.
Well, look, Bernie Sanders has been very clear about his socialist ways and what he is calling for as far as taxes and jobs. And the middle class, his middle class supporters see him as a guy who's going to do more for the middle class than Hillary Clinton. Agree with him or not, the facts are Sanders narrowly tops Clinton among all likely caucus goers when it comes to who will help the middle class more. 50 to 47%. Andrea, his supporters see him as someone who's going to do better for them, the middle class, the economy, jobs, than Hillary Clinton.
It's such a great point, Sandra. I mean, Rachel, you look at this, so almost an identical thing is happening, right? You see these outsider candidates on the right and the left tapping into these voters that feel forgotten, whether it's from a national security standpoint, whether it's an economic standpoint. As Sandra pointed out, the new political paradigm has completely been flipped on its head because of Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump.
It has, and there's an opportunity here. 27% of the population is Latino, so that's a huge, very important swing state in Nevada. And we see that she thought she had that demographic locked up. She has a great relationship with Univision. They have deep ties in the Latino left community. And Bernie is tied with her. I say the opportunity is for the GOP to get in there and remind Latinos, listen, you left countries that were socialistic, that were bad. Venezuela, Cuba, Mexico. You came for opportunity. This is a chance to educate the Hispanic community about it. And I'm not seeing that conversation. I'm hearing a lot of bashing and not a lot of what we're for.
But and you have two men who are running. You've got so much diversity on the Republican ticket.
Absolutely.
I mean, potentially, how is that conversation not being had right now?
Well, you know, my organization is doing it on the ground in the LIBRE Initiative in Nevada, but the candidates need to be that explicit. Just like Bernie's selling rainbows and unicorns and free stuff, we better sell economic liberty on our side because people want a choice.
All right.
Boom, drop that mic.
Yes, fascinating. We're going to talk to you more about that, definitely during overtime. I want to get your thoughts. All right, well, it's an epic battle pitting Apple against the federal government. The tech giant fighting a judge's order to unlock the iPhone that belonged to one of the San Bernardino terrorists. Everybody, you got to listen to this story. It affects each and every one of you. Why the FBI says that it needs to see what is on that phone. Plus, why Apple says complying with the order could endanger every one of us. So who's right here? We're going to debate that. And the fight over the future of the Supreme Court, what Hillary Clinton said about Americans raising a lot of eyebrows. Did she go too far? And right after the show, catch more from the couch on the web. It's called Outnumbered Overtime by logging on to foxnews.com/outnumbered. Click that OT tab. You can tell it's political season because more people are jumping on the chat. Fiery Outnumbered, fiery overtime. Meet us there.